Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the tawfiq once again to gather on Friday on Yawm al-Jumu'ah so we can remind each other to have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The remembrance of Allah, the awareness of Allah in every thought, in every action of ours. Taqwa, which is the source of our faith, of our iman. It is our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always make sure that we are doing all the good things that bring His acceptance and His pleasure, and avoiding all the bad things which can cause the anger of the Creator and the Sustainer of all things. On every Friday, we get this blessed opportunity to remind ourselves to strengthen and improve the status of our taqwa, which in turn makes our relationship to our Creator stronger. And we must always strive and work hard to make this connection and relationship stronger each and every day. It is one of the most important relationships that we have. With a stronger taqwa and a stronger relationship on the Creator, everything that we do in our life will be in sync with what He wants us to do, and avoid all those things that He does not want us to do. So of course we have to totally rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have this total tawakkul on the Creator and the Sustainer, so that everything in our life depends on Him for guidance, for the guidance that our life desperately needs. And without His guidance, we will of course for sure fall into a deep trap of the evils of this dunya, the glitters of this dunya, the fascination with the worldly life. We will all fall in trap, as normally people do. They fall in trap into the evils of this dunya, and they are devoid of the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we see that right in the beginning of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. So, of course, just the meaning of it, that this is the book in which there is no doubt, la rayba fi, right? And a guide for who? For those who are muttaqeen. In other words, the Quran will guide those that uphold and practice the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why this taqwa is so important, and we keep talking about it every Friday. It's a reminder for us, from Friday to Friday to Friday, and almost in every majlis, it is mentioned as well, because it is the main ingredient that Allah is telling us to have in order to be guided. This is the key to guidance. If you don't have this key, we're not gonna achieve that guidance that we need. And just like any key is needed to get into any door and into any library, the library of Deen, the Quran, is through this key of taqwa that Allah is telling us. For everyone else, this book is just a religious book. It is set on the top of the shelves. It is put away collecting dust, and is used in ceremonies of weddings and of funerals. But it is mostly ignored. And that's what we see today. That unfortunately, in most households, this book is just a book. And so because it's ignored, the book also ignores the person who holds it even. It's not giving any benefit to that person. It's just a book. They do not see the value of it. They do not gain the guidance from it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says right in the beginning that it will guide those who have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So going back to what the Maulana was saying last weekend, that taqwa is a complex word, as of course most words in Arabic are, that they have many meanings derived from them. But one of the main meaning of it is to be able to protect yourself from sins, right? To shield yourself from the sins, to shield yourself from the haram, to stay away from the haram as far as possible. And not even and to do that, you also even have to stay away from those things that are makruh, those things that are detested, those things that are not recommended, those things that are not favorable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So have a buffer zone between yourself and the haram is to even stay away from the things that are makruh. And this way you will definitely have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, we can see that the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like the muscle of our consciousness. We're always conscious of things that we do. And something always tells us what's right and what's wrong. We have this filter. So this is the taqwa that we have. We should always gain to strive to have this taqwa so that we can have this filter that we can differentiate right from wrong all the time. And just like any muscle, of course, you have to use it to make it stronger, right? So, but how can we test our taqwa? Like, what do we know? How do we see that this taqwa of ours that we keep talking about every Friday and on other occasions, that it's actually working, that it's actually producing some results? So it's upon you to test yourself. You have to see that the next time that you're tempted to go back to an old habit, bad habit that you've given up, that you've, made the resolution to get rid of this bad habit. But the next time that the shaitan tempts you on this habit, whatever that habit is, whether it's, continuous screen time, whether it's smoking, whether it's not being able to wake up for Fajr, missing the Fajr namaz, Salat. So you have to use your taqwa in those times and tell yourself and be firm to tell yourself that no, for the sake of Allah, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to, keep being on the screen while the namaz, while the salah is being missed. Or I'm not going to keep sleeping in the Fajr time and say, oh, okay, forget it. I'll just pray when I get up. This is one of the hardest times that people have of waking up for Fajr. 4 o'clock in the morning, it's not easy. But with the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can make it happen. And this is the training that you do for yourself, that you give yourself, that you tell yourself, yes, I have to push myself to have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I'm going to do the things that will make Him happy with me. And I will strive and sacrifice, or whatever I have to do to make sure that He's happy with me. Allah is happy with me. This is the practice of the taqwa. This is how you test your taqwa, that okay, I did it. I was able to achieve Fajr namaz, Fajr salah today, tomorrow, the next day. And of course, when you take one step towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will take 10 steps towards you. And you'll find yourself for sure that it becomes easier. That now it becomes easy to wake up for the Fajr. That you don't have to push yourself that hard. You'll find yourself that yes, I can do it. You'll find yourself staying away from the things that Allah wants you to stay away from. You will not like it from your own nature. You will by yourself, realize that I don't like these things. I don't want to go there. I want to go this way, the way that Allah wants me to go. So definitely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easier for you, and you will have that spiritual connection, that relationship that we keep talking about, the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It will become stronger for you, inshallah, and it will make it easier for you every day. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And one of the ways to increase our taqwa, of course, is that we always mention also, is to remember death. The reality that is chasing us everywhere, even though we don't realize it. In these days of Muharram, we are surrounded by the remembrance of the death of the Shuhada of Karbala. And of course, we see in our screens the funeral of the great martyr of our time these days being carried out. So we see death all around us. It's reminding us of its truth, its reality. And you can see even in that example that it wasn't just him who's an 80 years old, but also his daughter, his granddaughter were also martyred. So death does not care about the age. It does not care about the health. It does not care about the wealth. It does not care about the status. To death, it does not matter. It's just the appointed time that matters. And that's it. And of course, so in those examples as well, those people were not in the hospital. They were not sick. They were not, had any kind of condition that would cause you to think that logically, they were about to die. But no, they were fine. But why did they die? Because they stood up for the truth. They stood up for the haqq. And they were killed in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the similar, reason why Imam Hussein was killed and why the Shuhada of Karbala were killed. Because they stood up for the truth. They stood up for the haqq. They stood up for what was right against what was wrong. And for standing up for the truth and haqq against the batil and against the evils, they sacrificed their lives. So of course we have to take lesson from that. We have to take lesson about that and make every effort in our lives to stand up for the haqq, to stand up for the truth, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much pressure we face from the society or the world. And we see that today, right? I mean, there's zulm going all around us. There's injustice, whether it's in Palestine or whether it's in Lebanon or wherever it is. And some people are standing up for it, and some people are just ignoring it as if nothing. So that's the test that we have. That's the test that each one of us is facing. That are we standing up for that truth? Are we making dua for them? Are we giving zakat, giving donation, giving some efforts? Are we ignoring it altogether and just living our life as if nothing happened? This is the lesson that we must take about death, about life and death both. Where are we standing? And what did we learn from Imam Hussein as well? So the truth is, with the righteousness and the truth always is going to face persecution, is always going to face some challenges, is always going to face an enemy, as you see today. You see one person, he's bending the truth, he's calling the people that are on the truth, he's calling them liars and scum or whatever. But he himself is the one that the liar, the scum, everything that he's talking about, he is that person who's deluded, delusional, saying weird things. But he's the Yazid of the time. He is the Yazid, the Fir'aun, the Namrud, the Taghut, whatever you want. He represents everything that's evil. And he stands against everything that's for the truth. And he is willing to destroy, bomb away, whatever he wants to do. But in all essence, we have to see what is right from what is wrong. And that's what the lessons that we have to take. Let's go to this surah in the Quran, which is a very small surah that you hear every Jumu'ah. You'll hear it a little bit later anyways. But Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So in this surah, which is, one of the short surahs, only 3 lines, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by the time. وَالْعَصْرِ. And of course, the asr has many different meanings, again in Arabic, many different deeper meanings. But for our purposes, we'll just take that. It means time. The time, the passing time. Everything that we do rotates and is based on time. It was time that brought you here at this time. We have to always abide by the time that you have to go to work, whether it's you have an appointment to the doctor, whatever it is that you're doing is based on the time. And the time is always fleeting. It's running away from us, right? We're always running out of time. So by nature, losing the time itself is a loss. And Allah is saying, verily mankind is in loss. So that's the immediate truth, that all of us, all mankind is always at a loss. And of course, we see that in society, that mankind is deluded, delusional, chasing this dunya, chasing the world, chasing money, chasing everything except for what Allah wants them to do, what Allah intended for the mankind to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, in this last line gives an exception. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ, except, He gives an exception for few people who are these special people. Exception for those that have the faith or have the taqwa. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, they have the iman, they have the faith, they have the taqwa. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, they do the good deeds, they do the good amal, they sacrifice their time to come to the Jumu'ah. They don't just waste their time. They do good deeds, they do charitable works, they give zakat, they volunteer their efforts. They do everything they can to do the good deeds, whether towards their families, towards their friends, towards community. They're sacrificing and doing good deeds. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, right? And of course they are on the haqq. They stand up for the truth, the haqq, with the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are the people that sacrifice themselves to be on the haqq, that enjoin the good and forbid the evil. They preach to each other, they remind each other to be on the truth. And of course, lastly, they encourage each other and recommend to each other to have the sabr or patience. Because if you do all these things, if you have faith, if you do good things, good amal, and you stand up for haqq, bad things are going to happen to you. And you're going to need sabr. You're going to need sabr at the end. So that's why, all these things will lead you to have the sabr, the patience. Because when you do all these good things and you strive, and definitely the society and whoever is going to come for you. And you're going to face challenges. As we see today. The people that stood up in the colleges for Palestine, for the movement, they lost things. They sacrificed their degrees. Professors lost their jobs. Even CEO of the president of the university lost their jobs. Why? To stand up for the truth, what they believed in, the conviction that they had. They strived, and they knew that they would face these challenges, but they had the passion for the truth, that they did not care. And still you find people that have the courage and they have the valor to stand up and they sacrifice and they proclaim the truth, and they face consequences, but they are willing to face those consequences for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let that go by. Allah is total and pure justice. He will definitely reward every effort, no matter how small, no matter how tiny. Allah will not let it go to waste, and definitely will be rewarded from them. And this surah also sums up all the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. What did they taught us? What did they practice them on their own lives, and what did they teach us that we should take from their lives? It was the embodiment of this surah, that they had the iman, they had they practiced the good deeds, and they stood up for the haqq, and they had the sabr. The principle of this surah is what Imam Hussein and the Shuhada of Karbala lived by. They practiced the good deeds. For example, when Imam Hussein gave the water to the thirsty soldiers of the army of Hur, right? He didn't have to do that, but out of his generosity, out of his compassion for humanity, he sacrificed his own water for their good. And of course, he recommended to each other the truth. They recommended to each other. They encouraged each other in this hard and harsh time to stand up for the truth. They knew what they were facing ahead of them, but they encouraged each other. That night that they worshipped, they encouraged each other to have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to be afraid, and to have sabr for the sacrifice that they will be making the next day, on the day of Ashura, right? They definitely were the purest of souls. And we have to learn from their example. We have to take lesson from their sacrifices, from the way that they conducted themselves as we come to the majalis and listen to their stories. And you will listen to their story today as well, tonight. So we have to make sure that we are learning and always remembering and following in their footsteps. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to follow in the footsteps of Imam Hussein and the Shuhada of Karbala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, we have to seek the forgiveness of Allah, especially on Fridays when the doors of mercy are wide open. The most truthful book is the book of Allah. The best sunnah is the sunnah and the guidance of the Prophet and the Ahl Bayt alayhi salam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد والسلام عليك يا أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته والسلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا سيد شباب أهل الجنة إمام حسن وإمام الحسين السلام عليك يا أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي وخلف الحادي المهدي عليه السلام اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So brothers and sisters, we were talking about upholding the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by being the people of exception, by being the few that Allah talks about in the last verse of Surah Al-Asr, that those who do righteous deeds, who have the iman, do righteous deeds, and that recommend to each other the path of haqq or truth, and in times of hardship, they have the patience or have the sabr. Today is the 25th of Muharram and the commemoration of the shahadat of Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam al-Sajjad, alayhi salam. He embodies Surah Al-Asr throughout his life. The tragedies that he saw were unthinkable, unimaginable. And of course, he has to have the best of patience to go through the tragedies and what he saw on the day of Ashura and following when his aunts and his sisters and his family, the ladies of the household were dragged from Karbala to Kufa and then dragged from Kufa to Damascus. And the tragedies that they faced when they reached Damascus, which you will hear about these tragedies tonight. But of course, we have to take lesson from his life. We have to know what did he represent and what did he give to us. He gave to us something very good, something very full of treasure. And that treasure is called the Sahifa Sajjadiyah, the book of du'as. Imam Zain al-Abidin, the great grandson of the Prophet, he's known for his du'as and supplication. And there's a book called the Sahifa Sajjadiyah, which you all know about. This Sahifa is full of du'as. It is full of du'as for every situation in life. And you all have this on your phones and your apps. But just like the Quran is ignored and put away, the same way, unfortunately, these books are, ignored. We don't utilize these special du'as that are there that can help us in our daily lives. The du'as of Imam Zain al-Abidin are very special. They're very deep. They bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't matter whether you're Shia, whether you're Sunni, whatever you are. It doesn't matter. If you read these du'as, you will get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have nothing to do with this side, that side, who said what. This is pure. He teaches you the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the great grandson of the Prophet of Islam. He has nothing to do with Shia or Sunni. He will teach you Islam. And that's where you should learn the Islam from the pure source of Imam Zain al-Abidin. These du'as are for every situation in our life, for the kids, for the elderly, for the sick, for the things that you're doing in your life that are inflicting your life, troubles, the good times, the bad times. They're all listed. It's very simple. You just have to pick it up and read it, understand it, apply it, and for sure you'll become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other thing that Imam Zain al-Abidin that we have from him and the other treasure is the book of huquqs, the manners that for every individual, the parents, the kids. He taught us all these manners that we should have, how we should obey each other, how should we interact with each other. And we see in our society broken households. We see teenagers that are not listening to their parents. We see parents afraid of their children. Things that are not supposed to happen but are happening in our society, in our households. But why? When you have these treasures from Imam Zain al-Abidin, these books, these teachings that we're not utilizing, that we're not using, that we're not studying. We have them, it's there for you to use, but you're not using it. Again, remember what the Quran says in the beginning. It is a guidance. The Quran is a guidance for those who have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those that are muttaqeen. Well, the Quran and every book of guidance is only going to guide those that have the taqwa as well. I'm not claiming, of course, at all that the book of Imam Zain al-Abidin is anywhere close to the Quran. But what I'm saying is that if you don't use it, then you will lose it. And you will find that, yes, you have hardships in your house, you have problems in your families, and there's struggles that are beyond what we can control, and the next generation is in jeopardy. So we definitely have to take a lesson from the treasures of Imam Zain al-Abidin, his life, and all the things that he taught us, and the struggles that he faced, so that we can take advantage from that and be on the right path and be on the path of taqwa. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to follow in the footsteps of Imam Zain al-Abidin. May Allah hasten the reappearance of Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow Dar Zainab to continue to follow in the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and our children, our next generation, to be ready for the Imam of our time. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. إقام الصلاة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.